Thank you everyone for joining us today. Good afternoon and welcome to AARP's very first Climate Chats virtual event. Thank you so much for joining us today for a critical conversation on how climate change is affecting air quality and your health. My name is David Azevedo. I'm an Associate State Director with AARP California. And with our AARP California State Office, our team works hard to deliver results for our over 3.3 million members in the Golden State, working on important quality of life issues in healthcare, retirement security, and age-friendly communities. So last year, as we all know, we lived through it. It'll go down in history as a tumultuous, difficult year. And for us here in California, one of the most vivid memories is waking up to everything on fire every day for weeks, and in some places, months. The skies turned orange. We walked outside our front doors to be greeted with gray haze down the block. We wore masks not just because of COVID, but because of the smoke. But years like 2020 are fast becoming the norm. Every year for the past 5 years, we've experienced an increasing number of bad air days and a growing number of hazardous air days, in which the air is so bad that any exertion outside is severely harmful to both healthy and unhealthy people. AARP has a 60-year history of standing up for generations of older adults and their quality of life. Air pollution is a clear and present danger to that quality of life for older adults now and in the future. And that's why we're here today, to talk about how we got to this point, where we're headed if we don't take action, and what each of us as individuals can do, and together as communities, to reverse air pollution and its effects on our health and well-being as we age. With that, let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host for today and AARP member and volunteer, the one and only Bob Pratt. Bob, would you like to say a few words to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, David, and good to be here and join all. Our members are particularly interested in this, especially those in the 65 plus age group that have long experienced both friends and family impacted by lung health, usually in some form of COPD. In fact, in the county that we live in, COPD is the third most significant cause of premature death among older adults. And if that didn't do it for our members, certainly the recent pandemic coverage of thousands of disproportionately older adults struggling for breath has refocused the attention of so many of us on the importance of cigarette smoke, cessation, clean air, and lung health. And so for many of our members, this is a big deal, David.
Thank you so much, Bob. And so we're really excited to have a fantastic number of panelists with us today that Bob and I will be interviewing. And so really the event format today is very simple. We'll just spend the first half hour or so talking with our three panelists. And then if you have any questions at any time, we will be having the back half of the hour till 1 p.m. for open Q&A. So to introduce our panelists, we have Dr. Afif El-Hasan, who's a doctor and specialist in asthma and lung health with Kaiser Permanente here in California. His expertise has led him to be an active member in Kaiser's asthma care management team for more than 13 years, which strives to optimize the care of thousands of patients living with asthma. He also serves on the culturally responsive care committee for Kaiser in addressing cultural and linguistic aspects of patient care. Stephen Jimenez is with the American Lung Association, serving on their advocacy team as their Clean Air Advocacy Manager based in Sacramento. Stephen's work focuses on clean air and climate advocacy issues in California, representing the American Lung Association before local and state agencies. And finally, we have Brian Sheridan with the California Coalition for Clean Air. In addition to his core fundraising responsibility, Brian leads the coalition's California Clean Air Day efforts, which takes place in mid-October, which in short has grown to an estimated 650,000 participants across the state and over 500 organizational partners. So first I'm going to turn it over to Bob, who's going to ask the first question here, and then we'll alternate. So go ahead, Bob, take it away.
Great. Our first question is for Dr. El-Hasan. Doctor, a recent report by the University of California, San Diego says that tiny particles released in wildfire smoke are 10 times more harmful to humans than particles released from other sources. like car exhaust. And this report coincides with the unfortunate fact that California is seeing more weeks of harmful air quality due to wildfires increasing every year. Can you talk for a little bit and tell us about the general effects of harmful air quality on lungs, heart health, particularly for older adults?
All right. Thank you, Bob, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. The wildfires and the significant amount of smoke and dangerous smoke that comes from them are especially dangerous to older adults because of decreased lung function. And this smoke that we're seeing actually has multiple effects on the body, and especially in an older population where there's chronic illness. So one of the most important symptoms that we see, and one of the most important effects, is the inflammation that it actually causes in the lungs. And this obviously can cause shortness of breath, wheezing, but it can also increase the amount of susceptibility to illness, to respiratory illness, to getting a pneumonia, to getting a sinus infection, because of the increased secretions and the inability of the body to drain itself or get things out as fast as it might otherwise be able to if the lungs and sinuses are healthier. One of the other issues that comes up is the chronic illnesses like diabetes and heart disease, and smoke and smog both do affect those chronic illnesses, can be one of the causes for those chronic illnesses, and can make them worse. So very important, if someone has chest pain or has unusual symptoms, that they go to an ER or go see their physician. But there's, especially in older populations and in older adults, the smog can be also a issue because they are unlikely to go outside, get exercise, possibly may have difficulty going to the grocery store and getting groceries in a safe fashion. So there's some social issues with that as well. So I would advise everyone to do everything they can to avoid the smoke and smog. Watch the news, get on sites like the Air Quality Management District site or the KP or the lung.org site for American Lung Association, and get information on days when the air is less healthy and times of day, and make sure that you avoid going outside during those times.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So next on, we have our second panelist here, Stephen Jimenez, who's with the, and sorry, there you are, we're spotlighting here using our Zoom technology. So thanks for joining us, Stephen, from the American Lung Association. So our second question is, could you share with us the main sources of pollution here in California? Wildfire smoke and pollution from our cars may seem the most obvious, but we're also hearing that indoor air pollution from things like our gas stoves can be an issue as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. And on behalf of the American Lung Association, it's a great honor to be here today and help inform the audience in some of the ways to protect themselves and their lung health. Especially I want to give our thanks for the AARP and their efforts. The state budget is currently going on right now with the transportation sector, and I'm very much looking forward to working with you as the budget process continues. In regards to your question, ultimately California's, despite our best efforts, we are still facing a significant portion of the transportation sector to place a disproportionate burden on air quality here in California. Just to put in perspective, this sector constitutes about 80% of smog and particle NOx emissions in the state, and about half of the greenhouse gases here in California. And to put into further context, with exposure to these pollutants, you have a wide array of health impacts, such as premature death, asthma attacks, heart attacks and strokes, reproductive and developmental health harm, a greater risk of respiratory infection, and just to name a few that are currently going on right now. This is a major reason why we focus on the transportation pollution, as we are continually seeing negative health impacts associated with the transportation sector, with medium and heavy duty vehicles in particular, such as drayage trucks, placing a significant portion of pollution in the state. And ultimately, this disproportionately impacts, our most vulnerable, low-income and disadvantaged communities throughout the states, especially those living near warehouses and trucking corridors in California. In addition, California is also impacted by off-road equipment, such as lawnmowers and leaf blowers, which both the American Lung Association and the Coalition for Clean Air both work on. To provide further context, the off-road equipment contributes about 35% of statewide NOx emissions here in California. And by 2022, off-road equipment will replace on-road vehicles as the largest source of NOx emissions at the statewide level. For example, let's say, there's 1 hour of operations that emits a smog blowing pollution from like a leaf blower per se, versus a 2017 Toyota Camry, which is equivalent to the same amount of NOx production there, it's similar to driving from LA to Denver in that respect, and producing significant portions of harmful air pollution. And finally, although I primarily focus on the transportation sector, it's important to note, as you already mentioned, there are other sources of pollution that go out there, such as from wood stoves, refineries, power plants, factories, including agriculture as well. And happy to follow up with more information with the AARP on this respect. So some of the key strategies that are going on at the state right now, just to put into perspective at the state level, Governor Newsom is proposing over a $3 billion zero emission infrastructure plan that's going on for debate now today. And we're also, the American Lung Association is also involved at the state level with the smart growth and efforts to reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled and promote sustainable transportation options. In addition, we are also focusing on the Advanced Clean Fleets rule of the California Air Resources Board, which essentially seeks to achieve medium and heavy duty zero emission trucks and buses wherever feasible by 2045. In addition, we're also following CARB in their Advanced Clean Cars rule, Clean Cars 2, usually seeks to reduce criteria and GHG emissions for light and medium heavy duty vehicles beyond model year 2025 cars that are going out today. With the ultimate goal of increasing the number of zero emission vehicle sales in the state as well. We're also following along with our SOAR project as well as CARB, which is the Small Off-Road Equipment Program, which seeks to require new lawn, garden, and outdoor power equipment to transition to zero-emission technologies by 2024. In addition to that, go ahead.
Yeah, so informative, Stephen. And there were a couple terms just really quickly for everybody. I'm sorry, we are getting a little bit of audio issues, and we are trying to get closed captioning available. So please hold with us as we try to work that out. But Stephen, could you just very quickly talk a little bit more about some of the like GHG? You were mentioning GHG, like what is that, and NOx emissions. Could you talk a little bit more about those definitions for our audience here?
Yeah, GHG stands for greenhouse gas emissions, and essentially a significant portion that's contributing to climate change, and it's severely impacting our way of breathing and so forth. And the more GHG that we're having nowadays, it's making it much more difficult to clean up climate change and a lot of fires that are continuously going on nowadays. Excuse me, I'm being tongue twisted there. So we have that, and we also have NOx, which is our nitrous. Sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted there. Apologies, losing my connection.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. And so we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Bob for his next question to Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Maybe in the Q&A we can get to some of what you said. The off-road equipment frequently flies under the radar, and maybe we can talk about that and what that involves. But let's move on to Brian. Morning again, Brian. And the Coalition for Clean Air has a 50-year history. Congratulations on that, of successes in cleaning up California's air. Can you tell us just a little about this and what's at stake today?
I'm happy to. Thanks, Bob. And, I don't know how many were on, or maybe they didn't hear Bob's story of flying over the smog and how long it took to get out of that haze that I think so many, perhaps on this call, have experienced. Los Angeles, was notorious, the butt of many jokes, Johnny Carson, etc. in the 70s, 80s, and I grew up next to the San Gabriel Mountains, and there were many days where I couldn't see them in August. So it is really a remarkable, in many respects, success story of environmental regulations, somewhat behavior change, to get to where we're at today. I mean, it is a 70% reduction in smog. So we need to acknowledge that, and we need to acknowledge the fact that the creation of the EPA and the local air districts, and the ability to sue the local air districts for not following what they were supposed to do, which the Coalition for Clean Air has done, has been tremendous help. And some of our less popular projects, like programs like Smog Check, has also been tremendously helpful. But the reality is that Los Angeles still has the worst air quality in the nation, often trading with the San Joaquin Valley. Our friends at the American Lung Association do an amazing report on every year on sort of ranking these things. And, cities across California usually rank in the top 10. Even beautiful places like San Diego, 6th worst ozone in the country. So we still have a lot of work to do, and the nature of where that pollution is coming from has changed. So if you are living near the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, that today 40% of the goods coming into this country are going through, then you are getting much higher levels, of particulate matter and ozone and you name it. And that literally, more people die of air pollution in this country over time than automobile accidents. So we have a lot of work to do. And, I think the good news is that California, in many respects is leading the way, thanks to, and I'm so thrilled that AARP is having this conversation. Thank you, David, for making this possible. Because it is, older Americans and the very young that, really bear the brunt of what it means to breathe in, elevated levels of particulate matter. And so, as we look at what's on the horizon, we know that we have to, and I'm going to share a link here for all of you who want to get involved. We need to continue to invest in zero emission transportation options. And I think that it's remarkable that today we have over 800,000, electric vehicles on the road. We know that, especially when we layer on top of it what we've learned about climate change, that we have to do even better. And we have to get people not only to drive zero emission vehicles, but then we also have to get people in public transit and sort of really changing their behaviors to match our policy. So we've got a lot of work to do. I'm very hopeful. And I think if there's one place that has the most to gain or lose from, these positive policies and movements, it is California. We, as has been reiterated, we're at the epicenter of experiencing climate change with our record-breaking wildfires. So, it's incumbent upon all of us to really push forward. And I see Will shared the State of the Air report, which is really great reading. But it's incumbent upon all of us to really get activated and really ensure that we're moving in the right direction. Coalition for Clean Air is proud of the work that we've done over 50 years, but we know that we've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you so much for that. That was so helpful, Brian. And so we'll go ahead and move on to our next question with Dr. El-Hasan. So we're starting to hear more about, these nitty-gritty kind of terms, like particulate matter keeps kind of bringing up here. So would love to learn more from the medical side of things, of what that kind of means to our health. But really just as a bigger question, a lot of our members here are with us that are grandparents and perhaps great-grandparents. And while it's clear that there is an impact on older adult health from air pollution, I understand that you as a pediatrician have been studying the effects of particulate matter and air pollution, indoor, outdoor air quality on children. Could you tell us about what you've found and what the long-term consequences are for children that grow up in poor air quality conditions like we're seeing today?
Sure. Thank you, David. And thank you for letting me talk to something that's so close to my heart. I always, in my mind, get a picture of a grandparent with their grandchild walking down the street. And they're walking through the same air pollution. And Brian, thank you for bringing up the small kids aspect of that. They're both walking down a polluted street, and each one of them are having their own separate reactions and problems with the air, and some things that they share in common. So for little kids, there's actually a few issues that are deeply concerning. First of all, as I've mentioned with the elderly, you have issues with increased chances of getting respiratory diseases. COVID is hot right now as a topic. People who live in higher areas of air pollution, including children, are more likely to have worse effects from COVID than people who live in healthy air, because some of your defenses in the lungs are compromised, and you become less likely or less able to some degree to battle infection and clear your lungs as well. So while it goes for the elderly, it also goes for the very young. Also, young people are more likely to have asthma. If they're in polluted areas, their asthma is more likely to get worse. And then to top everything off, there are some studies, including a very large one from USC, that shows that if you live in areas with poor air pollution, your final lung development, so your lung development when you finally become an adult, your capacity to breathe, the amount of air you can take in, how clear your lungs are, it is less in children who have lived in areas with air pollution than areas where there's clean air. So what you've done to a kid is basically, and of no fault of their own, basically condemned them to lungs that are less functional to some degree than someone who's been living in clean air. It's unfair to the child, and as the child grows older and becomes elderly, and we all lose lung function as we get older, they have less reserve than someone who would have had better lungs in clean air. So we basically committed that child to a lung compromise, and it's unfair. And then add on top of that, and I'll go back to the analogy of the grandparent and the grandchild sitting at a baseball game or a baseball practice. When do children have activities? They have these activities very often after school during times of high air pollution, because it's around the time of peak traffic, rush hour, that kind of thing. So we have children trying to get exercise. We need them to exercise. We need the adults to exercise. But at the same time, very often that means going out and exercising in air that's not the best. And it's unfortunate and it's unfair, both to the child and to our older adults as well. Oops.
You're on mute, David.
Of course, that has to happen. If you have a bingo card with host being muted as he talks, now you can mark that. So we're going to move into the kind of part where we do kind of, okay, so we've talked a lot about really doom and gloom. This is difficult discussion to get through, right? But really quickly before we go on to our next one, Dr. El-Hasan, okay, so what can we do about that medically? Like what are kind of some aspects of our daily lives and routines, or what have you, that we can start thinking about just on an individual level? That great example of the grandparent and the grandkid trying to get some exercise outside or going to a ball game. What are some things to keep in mind as we're kind of looking at these longer, smokier summers and still wanting to be outside and exercise and be healthy?
Sure. There's actually a great way to do this, a checklist for everyone, old and young. So you have, first of all, if you have a chronic illness, whether you're young or old, make sure that it is managed optimally. Because if it's managed optimally, it's less likely that air pollution is going to harm you, or at least it will reduce the risk of what air pollution is going to do. That is number one. So make sure your medications are up to date, you've seen your doctor, you've had your screenings, your blood tests if you need them for your diabetes or other conditions. Make sure your blood pressure is under control. So basically stay healthy, work with your physician at any age, make sure you have your asthma medicine if you're younger, get everything under control. So when there is higher pollution, your body is ready to fight it as best you can. The other part of that is we do need to stay healthy with exercise. We just have to exercise smart. So if you're able to exercise at times when there's less pollution, and I had mentioned, American Lung Association has excellent resources on when to do that. Here in California, the air quality management districts in different areas do as well. But there are several websites that will let you know when air quality is better or worse. Take a look at that. Take it very seriously. And I never underestimate the social part of this. And for elderly adults, being able to interact is extremely important, not just for mental health, for being able to go out there, but also when you need help, when you need someone to help you in times of high pollution, when you can't go out. So keep the network up. And we want that grandchild and that grandparent walking down the street, but we want them interacting as much as we can for both their sakes, because mental health you need exercise for good mental health, you need good interactions, and you need good health as well. So exercise, keep up on your health, keep up on your medications, and make sure you have as good a social network as you can and be as inclusive as you can to everyone around you, because all of us are going to need help at some point.
That was so informative and so helpful. Thank you so much for giving us some ways to look at how we can manage this living in bad air quality. And I see on the chat, if you guys are checking the chat, Will Barrett from the American Lung Association has posted a link to a website that you can check your air quality. That's just one of those things that we should get used to, like checking the weather, right, with your air quality. So before I turn it quickly to Bob, so we're coming up around the halfway point of our time here today. As a quick reminder, this is going to be open to general Q&A. So if you have questions for Dr. El-Hasan, for Brian, or for Stephen, please put that in the chat and we'll call on you and you can have a conversation. So we're going to make this kind of like a town hall. Remember those in-person town halls? We'll get back to them soon. But I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Bob to ask the next question.
Okay, thanks, David. I noticed that some of the sites in the chat may help with this, but this is for Stephen. I sometimes have a strategy problem because when I'm walking outside and I on my phone I see maybe a smog alert. The usual devices get inside, but on the other hand, I've had there's announcements that sometimes the smog inside my house or the atmosphere or the air inside my house is worse than outside. So the question becomes, what can we do both as individuals in our own home and members of society to ensure that we're doing well and we can breathe safer, whether we're indoors and outdoors? And how do we even know what strategy we should employ?
Yeah, thank you for that, Bob. And I think that's a great question. And in fact, the American Lung Association has a website there, 10 ways to protect yourself and your loved ones from unhealthy air quality. And happy to throw that in the chat there. But some things that we could do is check your local air quality forecasts. Really, these metrics are color-coded and intended to provide the public with easy-to-read air quality map in your respective region. Avoiding exercising outdoors when pollution levels are high. In some instances, that might be limiting the amount of time you and your grandchildren may play outside, or children as well. Limit your activities to indoors when there is heavy pollution outside, including exercising. And when air quality is suitable, perhaps avoid having yourself and your family members exercise near high traffic areas. In many instances, despite air quality forecasts being labeled as green or healthy, busy highways can emit high pollution, levels from tailpipe emissions up to 1/3 of a mile. You could also use less energy at your home or consider going solar. Generating electricity creates air pollution from the fuel usage and associated with the energy production there. In regards to traveling, walk, bike, carpool, combine trips, use public transit systems. It's a great way to reduce your carbon footprint, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and ultimately promote a healthy and active lifestyle. In addition, you could also, don't burn wood or trash. Other regions of California, this might be more of a common practice, but really just burning these materials are a major source of particle pollution, causing major health impacts such as asthma, lung cancer, and other cardiovascular and respiratory impacts. And also just using hand-powered or electric lawn care equipment rather than gasoline-powered equipment. As I mentioned before, these are expected to be a significant portion of air pollution in California, coming up pretty fast. And these type of outdoor equipment have the potential to emit more pollution than a traditional car. Don't allow anyone to smoke indoors, and support measures to make all public places tobacco-free. And lastly, just getting involved at the support national, local, state efforts to clean up the air. And one way you may possibly do so is actually joining the American Lung Association's Healthy Air campaign. We actually have a couple petitions going on right now that I'd like to highlight. We currently have one with the Biden administration to promote environmental justice, facilitate the transition to zero emission vehicles at the national level, just to put it broadly. And in addition, there's also a petition for us that's really easy for folks to sign on to with the Federal Environmental Protection Agency to restore the state's authority to implement more protective vehicle standards, which is really important for reducing the impact that transportation has on everybody's lung health.
Okay, thanks so much, Stephen. Great information. I know there's additional question about what we can do indoors, and there's a question: do the air purifiers, Hepa filters, and things like that actually do us any good inside? And what kind of impurities do they remove?
I do apologize. I'm focused more on the transportation side of thesis here, but I'm happy to follow up with the AARP with more additional information on that end in particular.
I can help with that one if you'd like.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. HEPA filters are a wonderful idea, and actually a great, the American Lung Association actually promotes having a sanctuary room in your house in times of bad air, where you take a HEPA filter, which does an excellent job of removing bad particles from the air to make sure that the air is clean. And not only will it take care of things like smoke and air pollution, but it'll also take care of dog dander, cat dander, dust mites, which are also irritants and can affect a person's health and is a part of indoor air pollution. So HEPA filters, as long as they're legitimate, are excellent. Close the windows, turn one of those on, clean up the air in the room. It'll help both allergies, and it'll help with particulate matter that can be unhealthful as well.
Right. Thanks so much for both of you. David?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. No, thank you so much for that. That was incredibly informative, especially as we start to think about, okay, what are those consumer products that we should buy for our homes, or what can we do to our homes and apartments? And actually, that's a great segue into our next question for Brian. Because the Coalition for Clean Air has this very long history. I think you're celebrating your 50th year anniversary. That's how long you've been working to clean the air. Congratulations. And here in California, but you have a special event that actually does discuss what consumers can do coming up here. So Brian, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Happy to. Thank you, David. So, for those of you who, a few years ago, the California Air Resources Board came out with a report that said basically, hey, if we want to reach our climate goals, we're in danger of not doing that because people are driving more than ever. So, we looked at, that was fortuitous because it was that same year where we did the first California Clean Air Day. And California Clean Air Day encourages all of you to take simple actions to protect your health, improve air quality, and prevent climate change. And the website is cleanairday.org. And the next one will be October 6th. If any of you have, that's funny. I'm sorry, I just read the comment. It's that CCA now qualifies for our own AARP card. So I'm gonna pass that on to my board and let them know. But I think folks ought to think about, if you have that friend, and give me a thumbs up in the chat. I'm curious. If you have that friend or colleague that says, I can't do anything, it's all too hard, Clean Air Day and the Clean Air Pledge is a great way of encouraging them to say, hey, yeah, on one day, you can take one action for positive change. And, I think some of them were brought up, but, things like not sitting there and idling your engine as you wait in a fast food to pick up your grandkids, at school, all of those kind of simple actions that collectively make a big difference, but also get us to think about the kinds of things in our own impact on air quality. So, in a more modern example, many of us have become somewhat, I don't want to say addicted, but we have gotten very used to ordering on-demand Postmates and, Amazon packages. And that has created its own set of issues. And so if you can combine that, you can buy local, and if you can make that a habit, you can actually make a lot of positive change. And for those of you who have businesses or you're members of organizations, also at cleanairday.org, there's an opportunity for organizations to take a pledge. So we had 528 of those, everybody from Snapchat and, Southern California Edison to really small, businesses, restaurants and others who said, yeah, I can do something on Clean Air Day, which is October 6th. And really just, again, I'll just put it in the chat here, cleanairday.org. Just really encouraging all of you to take advantage. And, maybe AARP wants to host another one of these webinars on October 6th. It's, it's something that I've already sort of mentioned. Air quality is not something that just affects, someone somewhere. It affects all of us. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do our part.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And yeah, the consumer-based approach, I think, is one of the most powerful things to really wrap our heads around, right? Because, especially that I myself learned from you participating last year in the opportunity that you can combine Amazon packages. I don't know about you all, but I am so tired of just getting all those cardboard boxes just in general, and just knowing that I could solve my my too many cardboard boxes problem and also help save the environment. That just seems like a great win there. David, we're starting to get some really fantastic.
Sorry to, let me just really quickly say on that note, look, heavy duty trucks, are 2% of the vehicles on the road, but 50% of the diesel particulate matter. So, and every time, and I'm not faulting Amazon, they've got a very successful business model, but, every time we do that, we're contributing. So we really want to think about our actions. I also shared in the chat earlier, an article that Afif had contributed to about, during the height of the wildfire season last year, about some things that you can do to protect your health. So if you find that and you want to check it out, I think it's also worth reading.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for that. We are getting some fantastic questions in the chat. And so again, thank you so much for everybody putting that in there. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes going through all of these. So the one that I was most drawn to, because it was just Memorial Day. I loved the person who was saying that they enjoy an occasional outdoor cookout using their Weber charcoal grill and Traeger pellet smoker. They know what they're doing, and I would like to I'd like to invite myself over for that barbecue. Are those two sources a significant contributor to harmful outdoor pollutants? Who on our panel would want to take a stab at that?
I will say that when we were first, just the cooking of meat, I won't address charcoal. We actually had that as part of the pledge, and I don't remember why we removed it. But the cooking of meat does release a lot of nasty stuff. And when we were first experimenting with low-cost air quality monitors, we had a couple indoors, and indeed we saw spikes every time someone cooked, meat. So for what it's worth.
Oh, that's hard to hear. But I mean, maybe it's one of those things where what if you put it farther out, away? I know that I had for a long time my barbecue close to, the sliding glass door, right? Maybe just put it a little farther away or something. But again, yeah, hard to hear, but good to know. Good to know the facts there. And then we're getting some questions too about one great one from Marilyn. Is a carbon monoxide meter any help to measure indoor air quality?
Carbon monoxide is actually, it's a different kind of gas. It is obviously extremely dangerous, and we do recommend carbon monoxide monitors in everyone's house because it could be deadly. If you have carbon monoxide accumulation within a room, it can kill people. And we've seen that happen with people who've maybe taken outdoor grills or something and put them in the house. So I do recommend that they be inside of everyone's house in strategic areas to make sure monitoring of air quality is done. But however, it doesn't monitor particulates and it doesn't monitor allergens. So it's only good for air quality of levels of carbon monoxide, but it doesn't really tell us too much else. So yes, please buy them, keep them in your house, but it's not a measure of anything else.
And then relatedly, that was great. Is there a recommended MPR and Merv minimum rating for home air filters if one has asthma or allergies, especially where there may be fires?
I do like the regular standard Hepa filters because you can get a reasonably priced one on the internet. Make sure you get from a reputable company. I do like the ones that both filter and have a carbon filter in there because the carbon actually neutralizes some of the toxins as well. So those are the kind that I recommend. There are some older electrostatic filters that are out there. We don't recommend those. I think they work by creating an electric field and the ionization attracts to the filter. Those actually cause ozone within the houses. So we don't recommend those. We just recommend a regular Hepa filter for everyone. It tends to do the job very nicely.
And then that was great. So as a quick follow-up, I just noticed that Jesse actually did have a additional question there. So should we use an air filter or AC with an open window?
It doesn't hurt. There is some recirculation of the air with the outside world. So you probably should use it. The air will be cleaner on the inside. So I do recommend it, but I would also recommend running it after the window's closed just to make sure we catch up on cleaning the air. But you bring up an important issue, and this is a dilemma for Southern California. It's hot here. Climate change has made it hotter. People want to run their air conditioners, and we are running into issues where you have to choose between, can I afford to run this air conditioning system, or should I open the window and expose the family to the pollution outside? That is a very real dilemma for people in communities that might be underserved or who live in areas of very bad air quality. It's not fair. Once again, just talking about fairness, that you have to pay extra money to keep your family's air safe. It just, and that's why I commend the work that Brian, Steve, and everyone else, the American Lung Association is doing, the Clean Air Coalition is doing, because we want to make it fair for everyone. But yes, open air conditioning and air filter are probably the best things to do in high pollution areas, especially when it's very hot, which is very often when the air pollution is at its worst. But not everyone can afford to keep the air conditioning on all day. So opening the air the window and turning on the air filter is a good alternative.
And Dr. El-Hasan, let me just add that there's sort of a life hack, if you will, that I have seen, that is where you take a box fan and and maybe actually I'd love for your opinion on this. You take a box fan and you kind of put in a Hepa filter in the box fan, so that it's blowing the outdoor air kind of through the Hepa filter. And I'm not sure, I'm sure it's not as effective, but it might be an intermediary solution for folks trying to save some money.
Sounds good to me. It'll work. It won't be optimal, but that sounds great.
The MacGyver method, right?
Yeah.
Got to do what you got to do. No, that was really great. And that, that Dr. El-Hasan and also Stephen too, and Brian too. I mean, you all have one thing that I've kind of noticed here is, again, the price, right, that we pay as a whole statewide community for the air that we're breathing, right, from all these sources of pollution, but also the inequality and the disparities of where certain communities live and where disadvantaged communities have lived next to freeways more so than maybe more privileged communities. And that kind of goes to one question that we're seeing here in the chat about, and this we'll go to Stephen for this with his work with the American Lung Association, but where do you see some of the key opportunities in California, and where is there a nexus for updating statewide policies, local community policies? Where can AARP start getting involved? And where can our members start getting involved to help make a big impact?
Thank you for that. And I think that's a great question there. In fact, we have multiple petitions that are circulating right now that I previously alluded to in regards to the Biden administration and promoting environmental justice for our disadvantaged communities in particular. With our recent State of the Air report, we found that communities of color are 3 times more likely to experience harmful air pollution than communities of Caucasian descent. And so advocating for those avenues, making your voices heard through policymakers through our petitions would be a great opportunity for us to do that. We've launched pledges to invite people to learn more about ways to get involved to fight for healthy, clean air and climate. And through this, we armor people with information about climate change, opportunities to speak out, and other resources to make their case for healthy, clean air. And once again, there's links on the chat there, easy for folks to sign up to. In some instances, it's just your basic information. This is your name and perhaps just an email address, and it's a quick send off. But that would be a very helpful mechanism from our end.
Sure, and I know that you briefly mentioned how busy you are and your organization is at the state advocacy level. This is a big week for those who may not know in terms of legislation and where some bills are being heard in the state assembly and the state senate. There's some deadlines actually tomorrow. Stephen, are there any bills that have popped up that, if folks on this call wanted to learn more about what's being the hot debate or hot topic as regards to air quality and air pollution, what bills are kind of coming out top of mind to you?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is Assembly Bill 1110, which is essentially creating a mechanism for underserved and rural communities to gain access to zero emission vehicles, particularly the fleets and buses. That's a great one. I believe that's just actually passed the floor yesterday in particular. But another item that we're particularly focusing on is SB 500, which essentially would require autonomous vehicles in the state of California to be zero emission. We're at the cusp of these great opportunities technologically wise, but we also have to realize the public health benefits to this in particular. And so that's just another great opportunity for folks to hop on. At this moment, I believe they're switching from different portions of the legislature. So it's something that we just, us, the American Lung Association, keeping an eye on.
Great, and I'll do a quick plug, and I think Brian's familiar with this too, but AARP California, we're proudly supporting Assembly Bill 117, which happy to share that actually passed out of its first house, the state assembly, and that is an exciting program that would help low-income folks buy electric bicycles, or e-bikes as they're like to be called. If you haven't had a chance to ride an e-bike, I highly encourage it. Once you get on that, you're addicted. They're a lot of fun, and they definitely help you with those pesky hills that, you know, riding a normal bike might get, you know, might be a little hard to do. But yeah, that's one bill to watch too, because of course bicycles don't emit any emissions, and it's a great way to really kind of change the way that we move around our communities, and in a healthy way too. The Dr. El-Hasan kind of earlier kind of points about how important it is to exercise as we get older. And we're getting some really fantastic questions here through the chat. You know, one of the questions that we're seeing actually from this is around cows. Like this is a big topic, right? When anybody's talking about methane emissions, whatnot, right? Cows always seem to come up. Cows, according to this comment that I'm getting from here, produce on average 100 to 200 liters of methane per day. Does anybody have any information or research on the big cow question that keeps popping up?
So a couple of, I mean, you know, it's interesting, right? So California's low carbon fuel standard is one of those very wonky policies that are hard to wrap your head around, but have been very effective. And one of the areas that it's helped to, you know, really change is actually where our fuels are coming from. So slowly, as part of this policy, you know, our diesel is being replaced with, you know, renewable diesel. Natural gas is being replaced with renewable natural gas, et cetera. But it's still a huge issue. You know, methane is a quote unquote super pollutant in California, and Coalition for Clean Air has, you know, helped to pass a couple of pieces of legislation over the past couple of years. But again, you know, last year with Clean Air Day, we added, you know, go, you know, vegetarian for the day because it is such an issue. And so, you know, I think people really should be paying attention to it. And it's, yeah, it's a challenge. And it also has, you know, localized emissions in places like the Central Valley with these huge feedstocks. So.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. That's really interesting. And we actually got a great question too, because this is something that AARP knows a lot about and is working very hard on, because it's an issue near and dear to many of our members. But how can we combat social isolation if we're asking older adults to avoid outdoor activities in high polluted areas? And for those who may not be familiar with our work here, the idea of social isolation is a huge and growing problem for older adults across the country, you know, with things like, you know, family members moving away, you know, just things happening in life, right? And how, you know, maybe a partner may pass away, leaving one to live alone. You know, this is something that we're very concerned about. So of course, COVID was this big moment of social isolation for all of us. And I know for me, I got my first personal glimpse of what that was like, right? Living, you know, thankfully with one partner, but still separated from friends and family for 1.5 years. And when I couldn't exercise, even take a walk outdoor because of the air pollution, I mean, that really took a toll on my mental health. So that's a great question. I don't know if anybody has any kind of comments to that about how we can help combat social isolation when these times we have to avoid outdoor activities.
I'll make a comment on it. You know, we really do need to leverage the technology we have available in much the same way we're having this Zoom meeting. A Zoom call with family members doesn't take long. It's an inexpensive way to talk to people. That is one important way that we can keep in contact. The good old telephone works too, you know, but very important, because we forget, how long does it really take to talk to someone and check in on them? It doesn't take long. There are also some excellent apps out there. And I just bring them up because that help self-help apps. We actually have some at Kaiser. The Calm app that we use, which actually has been clinically proven to help people with calming down, relaxing, taking the stress off. So there are actually some very effective apps that are out there that you can buy, or depending on sometimes your health insurance will buy it for you. But we do have that is available out there to people. And you know, it's funny. I actually see sometimes that people listen more to their phone than they do to me. So this is a good example of that with these apps. That people that helps as well. But we really have to leverage the tech during this time, and people need to see each other's faces on the phone, and it's not optimal, but it does the trick.
David, I was just wondering, while we're on this topic, we've all become mask trained these days, that if a compromise is if you're a little bit suspicious about the air quality or the pollution due to smoke or anything like that, since we're mask trained, does it help to just put on a mask and still get outside with your friends?
I think it's a great idea. The only issue is, especially in an elderly population, make sure that the mask is not impeding the ability to breathe, especially if you're going to exert yourself a little bit. You know, and so yes, the mask, it's one of the reasons we had insignificant flu season. It probably helped everyone with the pollution when they did go out, but just be careful. And now they're even recommending double masking, although I know the mask mandates are going away. But don't put enough mask on yourself or exert yourself in such a way that you don't feel comfortable breathing, because that can lead to a dangerous situation.
And so we're about close to time here, but I do want to point out that we've got some fantastic resources that are being shared in the chat, and I'm going to save the chat as the host here, and make sure we're going to follow up with everybody that's attended today with some of the resources that were shared by both our panelists and also by some of our participants. But with that, I want to kind of just let for the last couple minutes here, if anyone has any kind of parting thoughts to share after our conversation today.
David, I just want to thank you for having us. You know, Coalition for Clean Air, been around for 50 years. I want to invite everybody to sign up for Clean Air Day at cleanairday.org, take the pledge, you know, get whatever organizations you're a part of to take the pledge. You know, we had 500, our goal is to get 1,000 organizations. We had 1.6 million people participate. We want to get to 2 million people, you know, all doing something, at least one small thing. And if you're really ambitious, go out and check out the opportunity to buy an electric vehicle or go solar, or switch to a greener energy rate, which is a less of a, maybe an intermediary step to solar. So lots of things that everybody can do.
All right.
Thanks so much, Brian. Dr. El-Hasan?
I wanted to thank the AARP for putting on this event and send my kudos to the American Lung Association, to Steve, who I work with in the American Lung Association as well, and to Brian, because it's always a pleasure working with the Clean Air Coalition. So thank you for having us. And once again, for everyone, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and that is the most important part of all of this. And that's going to get you through all of the struggles that we're going through right now.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here with us today, Dr. El-Hasan. And Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to say thank you, everybody, for having us once again. Really, it's an honor just to be here and talk to the audience, albeit virtually. But as Dr. El-Hasan has said, you know, very much we're at the cusp. We are very close to ending this and getting back to normality. So very much looking forward to that, and perhaps having this next year in person.
Yes, I love that idea. Let's all knock on wood. And Bob, do you have any kind of big takeaways from today's conversation?
Just terrific information. I thank the folks for taking the time to inform us. So thanks so much. Thanks so much to all. David, over to you.
Thank you very much.
of what will be many climate chats. We're going to be focusing on a variety of great subjects on how climate is affecting our health and well-being. Thanks again. This concludes our event. And on behalf of all of us at AARP and our panelists, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today. Have a great rest of your Thursday.